It doesn't matter if you get thousands of people to your webinar, all of these people to show up, because at the end of your webinar, the most important part is your call to action. If you choose the wrong one, you could end up with a big fat goose egg and no revenue. So in this video, I'm gonna be talking about the 3 different call to actions that you can choose at the end of your webinar and when to actually use them. Because if you're not using the right ones, then you're gonna bang your head against the wall trying to figure out which one is best for your business. So if right now you're thinking to yourself, do I change the call to action? Do I book calls? Do I send them direct to cart? Do I do an ascension model? I'm gonna show you everything right here in this video. My name is Michael, and we run over 300 webinars for our clients a year. And this is something that always becomes a bit of a bottleneck and one of the first things that they ask. And the reason I'm kind of bringing this up here is because somebody came to me and they asked for an audit of their webinar. And the first thing that they told me before I even got into the audit was, hey, I'm thinking about changing my call to action. Currently, we book calls, but I'm thinking about selling a low ticket product for $1,400 during the event. And so before I told him what to do, I had to go dig into his data, right? We had to really understand, is that the right decision to make? Because one of the biggest mistakes that most people make is that they aren't sure exactly where the bottleneck is. And if you're not sure where the bottleneck is, there's no way for you to fix it. And so for him choosing to change the CTA without understanding exactly what was wrong was a big deal. And for him, after I analyzed everything, the last thing he wanted to do was actually change his CTA. And the reason being was because out of all of the people that showed up to his webinar, he was booking 35% of the people that showed up to his webinar. Not just got pitched on the webinar and saw the offer, that showed up in general. That is an extremely high booking rate. And so for him, he couldn't figure out what was wrong, right? He doesn't know if it's a sales team, he doesn't know if it's presentation, but the first thing that he did was say, hey, I'm going to change my CTA. And in that case, 35% is so high that it's probably the only thing he didn't need to change. And this video is going to explain for people like him and yourself when you need to actually change it, or what are the options that best fit your business and the outcome that you want. So there are 3 different types of call to actions that you typically are going to want to use, right? So number 1 is booked calls. Now this is the most common that most people do, and it's the safest in my opinion, especially if you're starting out. So if you're thinking about running a webinar, the reason why I like book calls is the very first thing you do is because more people will book calls and actually purchase during a webinar, right? And especially when you're in the very beginning, you don't know the structure of your webinar, you don't know if your offer is working. If you do a direct to checkout and you're trying to get somebody to whip out their credit card and swipe it on the webinar with no salesperson and nobody buys, you literally have 0 clue, right? You're gonna have to try to pick up the phone, call these people, and be like, hey man, you were on my webinar, why didn't you buy, right? Big problem. It makes it really, really complicated for you to optimize your webinar early on. I always recommend doing book calls no matter what you're actually selling, no matter what the price point is at first, because the first thing that a book call does is, 1, it makes it easier and you get more volume of people actually booking calls. And so you can figure out, did my CTA actually get people attracted enough to book a call, to spend the time on a call, right? So first is, it's easy, right? Booking calls is a lot easier than direct to checkout. The second thing is that it's more guaranteed, right? It's more guaranteed that you're actually going to book calls on this. And the third thing about booking calls that I really, really like, especially when you're in the beginning, is that you can get feedback from people, right? So when you hop on a sales call with somebody and they don't convert, you at least get feedback to understand why they're not converting, okay? This is especially important when you're in the very beginning because feedback and data is the most important part. So when you look at this and you're not getting any feedback from this, if you're selling direct to cart and you're out there trying to, like I said, call those people and ask them why they're not buying, you're not gonna get enough feedback to understand what you did wrong and what you need to change. Now with this, you have enough feedback, right? If you're on a sales call and the person, let's say everybody's poor, they're broke, they have no money, right? You can at least be like, man, we were talking to all these people and they didn't have any money. But direct to cart, guess what? You don't know if they had the money. You don't know if they didn't want to convert, right? And so same thing as if you're talking to them and you're just not able to handle the objections and everybody has the same objection, right? Okay, great. Now I understand that objection. I'm going to add that to my presentation so that I can handle that objection with everybody at once, right? And so this allows you to get a ton of feedback, right? And so booked calls are really important when you're starting out. The other thing about booked calls is that it depends on what you're selling, right? If you're selling like a high ticket product, anything in my opinion, pretty much above like 2,000-ish, like 1,500 is like the safe top to go direct to cart where people are just gonna go check out on a single, 2-hour webinar. But if you're going above $2,000, you're gonna wanna book calls, right? Because not a lot of people are just gonna swipe their card for 2,000 bucks, especially if they're not extremely affluent. Not extremely affluent, but think about this. If somebody has, let's say 10K to their name, which a lot of people do have $10,000, right? And you're asking them for 2 grand on a webinar, you're asking them for 20% of their income or their savings. Like that's a lot, right? For them, it's 20% of their savings that you're just gonna swipe and not have a conversation. Those types of people, they need to have a conversation with somebody because that will help them get over the line. That'll help them get their questions answered. It'll help them get excited about the opportunity and they will buy during a sales call, right? And so depending on what you're selling, if it's high ticket, medium ticket, make sure you're going to booked calls until you get enough feedback to where you could attempt to go a little bit higher. To be clear, we do have clients that are selling $3,000, $5,000 during a webinar, but it's not very common. It's like literally 5% of the time you're able to do anything above like 2K very consistently at a really good ROAS, right? And so if you're doing high ticket, then make sure that you're booking calls. Now, the other thing about the CTA is how you're positioning the actual CTA depends on your audience. So when you're doing this with, let's say, like a more affluent, all right, so more affluent audience, when you're doing it with an affluent audience, one of the better things to do with affluent audiences is actually drop the price. And the reason is, affluent audience, I'm saying somebody who has, that makes 250, 500,000 or more of an entrepreneurial business type audience, the people that don't want to waste their time, right? Think about maybe yourself. If you're a business owner and you make good money, you just want to know the price. And I want to decide, I like what you have, just let me know the price and I can like make a better quick decision, right? I'm not here to waste my time, hop on a call, get sold by some kid, 20-year-old who does high ticket sales. Like, tell me what the price is. Now, the cool thing about when you're working with an audience like this, they're kind of like the no bullshitters. Like, tell me the price and I'll let you know if I'm interested, right? And so I always recommend with the fluent audience, drop price, right? And again, this fluent audience is more of like the entrepreneurial business owner type, like no bullshit type of audience. You may even go after an affluent audience, but they're more of the general public. The general public is the one that you do not want to drop price to, right? So general public are the people you don't want to drop price to. A lot of the general public haven't invested in themselves before. And so if you're selling, let's just say a $5,000 product and you tell them it's 5 grand, these people are going to like have a heart attack. Like, dude, what? Like my car is 5 grand. Like, so one thing you have to be really careful of is when you're thinking about dropping price, make sure that you know your audience and you know that they're going to be happy with the price drop. So for me, specifically, if somebody doesn't tell me the price, like I've been cold emailed all the time and you probably have to cold email. They're like, hey, I can do this for you. And I'm just like, okay, sounds good. If I'm interested, I'm like, what's the price? And all the time they try to beat around the bush. Oh no, we can hop on a call. I don't know. I'm like, dude, look, don't bullshit me. Like, just tell me the price and I'll let you know if it's something that I've been interested in because I'm looking at all of these other options. Like if your price is outrageous and I don't agree with like I can find it somewhere else cheaper, like just let me know, right? If what you provide is really good and I can see the quality, I can see the testimonials and your price seems fairly reasonable, yeah, let's hop on a call, right? And so make sure you know what you're doing with the price. General public, do not drop price. If you do drop price in general public or even like the affluent audience, the one thing that you have to know is that your calls will be less. So you will have a drop in call volume, but you will have an increase in close rate, right? So the reason you have an increase in close rate is because when people know the price, there's not that like price drop objection, that like mystery, the entire call of like, how much is this thing, right? And so this is one thing that you are going to want to test out if you're thinking about dropping price is what's the risk to reward and what's the amount of people that don't book a call that could have closed if you didn't book the call? Or what's the amount of people that are booking calls that aren't qualified, that are having a tough time closing because they didn't know the price beforehand. And so you're gonna wanna look at this, but this is one of the really important factors of when you drop it, you have to understand if you're dropping price that your calls are going to drop as well, but your close rate will look better. So thinking about the quality of your sales team. If your sales team is awful and they can't close anybody, it might be worth dropping price and hoping that there's enough book calls and those people are going to be closing a little bit easier for your team, right? So overall with book calls, it's the safest, easiest, and most effective way to actually start a webinar, right? The other two right here are a little bit tougher, but they make a really cool scalability to your ads, right? And so the second one is DTC, which is direct to cart. Now, I like direct to cart, but it's not an easy thing to do. So what we were explaining right here where you have a higher risk because you don't know if people converted. This is one where you're just going to have to know that you may have a low conversion rate. And when you have a low conversion rate, you're going to have to, it's going to be a little bit of a mystery as to why it didn't work or why it did work, right? This one takes a lot more testing, and especially testing of your offer, because what you're doing is you're asking people literally to go swipe their card for something. And again, with this, I recommend that 2K or below. Do not sell something over 2K with this, unless eventually like they're just closing like butter at 2K, and you're like, all right, cool, let's increase it to 2,500, let's increase it to 3,000, right? Again, like we have a client, he does $3-4 million a month, and it's just direct to cart. Absolute dream, right? Because I don't have to deal with salespeople, we don't have to deal with this long sales cycle. We run a webinar the night of. We get to figure out how much money we made, and so that's one of the really cool things about direct to cart. But it's definitely a little bit more difficult to do, and it takes a lot more time. So the downside to this is time/testing. So you're gonna have to test a lot to try to get this thing right. And what you really wanna look for is you wanna be at a 10% plus conversion rate on direct to cart. Now, going back up here real quick, I didn't touch on it, but you wanna be KPI at about a 20% plus of the people that get pitched book a call. That tells you that you have a good presentation, right? And down here, if you can get up to 10%, you have a really good opportunity to scale this thing up, right? And again, most of the time, you're looking at like 2K or below. A lot of people are doing like a 997 right here. I know people that are doing like a $400 or $500. The problem sometimes with really, really, really low ticket is that it is tough to be at a 2, 3, 4x ROAS. Like it's sometimes even hard to get it to a 2. And the reason being is because the amount of spend it takes for the lead and the amount of time, it's basically you spend for the lead has to show up, the cost per lead, the cost per show is high, the cost per pitch is high, and then the cost per purchase. So there's all these hoops that the person has to jump through. By the time they get to the end of that, it's a very expensive lead, it's a very expensive pitch, right? And so make sure that if you're doing this, you take a lot of time, you take a lot of testing. Now the third one is basically like a hybrid approach of direct to cart, but it's a direct to cart ascension model. I love this model right here. This is one of the like more fun, scalable models. The purpose of a direct to cart ascension model isn't necessary to make money on the front end, okay? That's what I think a lot of people get wrong in an ascension model, is like your job in an ascension model is to either break even, you could even lose a little bit on the front end, but have a back end high ticket offer, right? And so let's say on the front end, you have a 997 offer, right? But on the back end, after everybody books a call or everybody buys, they get an onboarding call, right? On this onboarding call, this is where you're selling something that's 5K plus. Ideally, you're selling something that's like $7,000 to $10,000 too, or you have different tiers. But when you have this model on the front end, let's say you spent 10K, and during the webinar, you ended up getting 10 of these people to actually buy, right? So 10, now you've got your 10K back, and now all of these people here, there are 10 calls on the calendar. Now, these are not your typical booked call. These are 10 calls of a calendar of people who just purchased for $1,000 and took their credit card out, that are excited to show up to the call because it is a onboarding call. It is not a sales call. It's not something where they're like thinking about showing up or not, or maybe I want this. No, they already got it. They want to show up and get prepared for what they just bought. And so you have an extremely high show up rate with these booked calls. Now, you're gonna have a lot lower volume of calls. So this model right here is very similar to this one, to regular direct to cart. Like, it's not gonna be easy to do. It's gonna take some time to do, but if you can master it and you have like, let's say 2 really good salespeople, you can book 10, 15 calls, and like they can have like, they're not gonna be overwhelmed, and they're not gonna be like dying for calls. There's gonna be like a nice balance, right? If you have like a staff of salespeople, right? You got like 5 or 6 salespeople. This method right here isn't the best unless you've ran it multiple times, because you're gonna have to basically think about, like, if you're gonna get 10 book calls in this scenario, then you have to spend 10K. It's like $1,000 a call. You're breaking even because this, right? And so if you want, let's say, 30 booked calls because you've got 5 different salespeople, then you're gonna have to spend 30K to get those 30 calls. And if you have to spend 30K to get those 30 calls, you may end up with like 25 because you start to scale and you start to lose a little bit of that ROAS, right? And so this model right here is really cool if you can crack it, because essentially the way that I like to think about this and look at it is that the front end of it is I look at like net spend, meaning that in this scenario, if we did the 10K spend and we basically canceled it out with a 997 offer, we spent $0 on this webinar. So that is infinite ROAS, right? And if you just closed one of these 5Ks up here, technically you didn't spend anything. Your net spend was 0, right? And so in this scenario, let's say you sold 25 of them, well then your net spend is 5K. But you've got 30 calls on the calendar and you close, let's say close 5 of them into the upsell, now you're looking at 25K and you're looking at a 5X in terms of net spend. This one allows you to scale very, very aggressively because you're getting the immediate feedback, right? You're getting the people that are buying immediately. And so if you're spending $5,000 a day and every day, let's say you're running like an evergreen webinar, or 7 p.m. every day webinar, you're getting that money immediately. And so you're like, okay, cool, I'm just breaking even. I can keep scaling and scaling and scaling and scaling. This is how a lot of people have scaled. They've done low ticket ascension. And even if you have the booked call formula up here at the top, so even if you're doing book calls and on the webinar, you're booking the calls, but you're selling a 5K, always have an ascension. If you're selling a 5K, have a 10K, a 25K ascension to an inner circle or something like that, where they can still pay you more because the beauty of having somebody that's already paid you is they like, know, and trust you, and they've taken out their wallet, right? That means that they're a good lead. At a $5,000 purchase price, typically somebody is willing to pay $7,500 or 10K or even 20K sometimes to get the next level of support, right? And so my favorite, when you can do it, is the direct-to-cart ascension model, right? This one right here, to be honest, if you can do this one, which is really difficult, and you can do this one with like a 3K product or like a 5K product, this one is sick. Like this one's really, really, really badass if you can do it with like a higher ticket product. But again, very difficult to do. If you can crack that, you're a badass. We have one client who can crack it, and it's like one of the most fun accounts. But likely you're gonna be in this scenario right here. So if you do sell low ticket, make sure that you have high ticket on the back end and you can get those people in so that you can actually increase your ROAS and you can actually scale the business, right? You can't scale a business selling 997 only on a webinar because you're gonna end up basically either breaking even, like this scenario right here, or maybe making a little bit. And so you see people all the time, they're like, oh yeah, we make, $1 million a month. But little do you know, they spend $850,000 a month, $900,000 a month because they're playing in a ball field like this, right? And so think about your business right now when you're looking at it. Which one actually works best for you, right? Are you just starting out? Don't even think about going direct to cart. Are you already experienced and you've got the bookings dialed in? We'll test a webinar alongside where you're sending them directly to a cart, or test it where you're sending them directly to like a 997 low ticket ascension offer. Because if you have a high ticket offer, you can always steal just the course itself and sell just the course as the 997 or the low offer, and then ascend them into the coaching calls, the things that are a little bit more hands-on, some of that done for you stuff you may have. And so look at your business, look at your offer, look at your webinars right now, and decide which one of these work best for you. Don't jump ship too early, don't change too early. Make sure you're analyzing all of your data so you know which one of these is gonna be the best, right? So I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any more questions, you can comment below. I respond to almost everything, and I'll make sure that you make the best decision. All right, see you soon.